And we're waiting for YouTube to confirm there is a connection. I will assume that I have two hats on. And go ahead and say what's up to my 0 viewers. Future me. Getting some weird brainwaves earlier, but it kind of passed pretty quick. And oh man, sitting in that chair. I mean, sitting in any chair is no bueno. Got so many back problems. But all right, so yesterday I streamed. I took a half an edible and wasn't able to really get that far. Well, at least I got lost in my designs and didn't have the focus to really. I'm trying to make a website. I'm trying to. Well, so I had a little more clarity today, and what I am sure of is I'm trying to make a simple test system that looks decent. It could actually look pretty cool, and I think there's going to be a lot of different variants of this thing. So I need to kind of create different ones. They're essentially just basic layouts. It's like what goes where and how do you click through it. Part of that challenge is the hash router. All right, let's flip over to some notes and just kind of, as I'm explaining these things, write some things down. So, I wanted to check. Do I have a hash router? There's something in one of these. Hash runner. Okay, which is basically a hash router. But it was actually a little bit more for like, yeah, I built like a file. Yeah, okay. File system view is right here, and then so I'm overriding this class, and I'm kind of part of the view for this class. Yeah. Okay. So this is a strange system, but it actually worked out pretty cool. This is a little bit more. Is a little different than. I mean, it's sort of along the same lines of how does it work? What does it look like? How does it work? How do you get different files loaded and executing and using the hash? The hashtag is just a quick and easy way to like let the browser remember where you are, so that when you refresh the page, you're reloading the exact same thing. This works. It needs the directorize. It needs this.files, which comes from. I don't think I actually use this load script, do I? I think I was thinking about it. There's different ways to load the script. Script type equals framework. I have no idea. What is that? What is that? I didn't put that there, motherfuckers. Maybe I did. I have no idea what an elements framework script type would be. That's weird. I've never seen that before. I don't know if it had. Maybe AI told me to do it, but it's also up here, which is interesting. That's really kind of crazy to me. But anyway, what the fuck is type? All right, I get confused and curious. HTML script type framework. That's not even a thing. I just made that up. Oh my god. But I don't think I did. Like, I have no recollection of that, and I've never thought anything. I can't recall anything about an attribute, like just this random type attribute of framework. Like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. But a lot of times, I'm coding while I'm fucked up and barely able to think. So, anyway, we're fetching the directorize thing here. The directory is whole different thing, but it's basically just a structure. It reads the file system and creates this, and that's what the hash runner is. But the hash runner was definitely doing a hash reload and then also a hash matching, searching for the file. Oh fuck, man. Okay, I had to do a search. Okay, so yeah, the the directory data is like this little bit here, and the matching part is essentially like looking at the hash, the window location hash, and seeing if the file matches and then running it. So this is sort of like a hash router, but it was also a little bit more like just running a specific JavaScript file. So the idea here is that the way I'm rendering it, there's like a play arrow next to the file name, and when you click that icon, it will take you to, or I think it's the whole div you click anywhere on the name or arrow, but if you click on the file and it's a JavaScript file, yeah, here, if the file name has .js in it, then it's going to make it a playable thing that will then reload and then match and then execute it. Oh, I do use load script here. Okay, so I load the script, append it, and that's basically it. And so on some of my pages in here, I believe there was like just this this hash runner. Just this hash runner like loaded in, and that's basically just it. I just create one of them, and then nothing really happens because there's no, well, okay, so that's not true. It renders itself. The hash runner was rendering itself. That's true. And initialize it. Oh, here. If there's a hash, check it for a match. Otherwise, render. That's the basic logic there. Kind of crazy. But we're going to fetch some stuff. We're going to await it. We're going to get all the files first and then do the matching. We have to have the files before we can match to them. And anyway, it was just the whole goal of it was just to be able to create a new file or a directory. It works also for directories to just list them for you so you can see what's there. And that's half the battle, so you don't have to like create your own links to shit, which is just, these two minor steps are creating the new folder, but then, linking to it in the previous folder or and somewhere else so that you can actually see it and find it and click it and whatever. And it's two of the most basic creation steps you need to do, but man, this whole well-known Acme challenge thing was such a pain in the butt. What was that for? That was for Firebase, I think. I was trying to verify the domain so the certificate would work. But what the fuck is well known? I don't know. I'm sure there's some sort of white paper that's overly technical about what the fuck's going on, but most people in the tech community, they just do what they're told. They just copy and paste shit and be like, okay, if it works, let's keep going. Anyway, so what was I thinking? I was going to try and explain the whole objective here. Fine, whatever. Tests. I think it is a test. I'd written this up before. I can probably find the tests class. It's not this test class. This is something different. Well, it's something similar, but a little different. Tests is, test class is for a single test, and tests is a plural class name for the test suite or collection tests. So it could use, it could use a list or collection base class, but I don't have one right now, and I've been kind of resisting the urge to make one. I think list views could be really powerful, but all right, so let me just kind of type up some of my handwritten code here. Export default new tests, and by default the properties here would be properties, methods, etc. Overrides essentially for like default behavior, but you could also add methods, and then you could add these would be more like utility methods that would be available on the tests thing. So we're exporting a new instance of tests, and so you could import tests from wherever, and then tests dot some utility method could go some utility method. Or you could go tests.run, and then it would probably render, but maybe run without rendering, or tests.render renders, well, let's just say runs all tests while rendering. Or maybe not all. This is what I'm trying to think through. Maybe not all tests, like just first level, just default. Or maybe it does render all of its tests, and inside, let's write this down here. Maybe inside each test could optionally be more tests. So the integration between these like trees, essentially, when you're importing one tree into another tree, is kind of what I'm trying to think through here. So, well, I didn't really get to these are the actual tests here. These auto run. So like, whoops, this would be like test 1 maybe, and here are these better names. Test 2, but test 1 and 2 and however many, these are added in a way where they're like saved as a probably they could also be added to the test thing. So test.test1 is this function, but in case you wanted to call them, I hadn't really decided all that. I don't know if I actually set one of these up and got it working, but it could. And part of the idea here is, number one, well, could you extend this? Well, frankly, yeah. So then well, I don't have a clone method right now on my base class, which I could. How would I clone this thing? That's not an easy thing to do, because some of the properties and methods come from the constructor and the prototype, and some of them are added as overrides, and figuring out exactly, well, so object.create, right? Isn't that the generic object.create? Well, it'd be like clone could be, you have arrow methods like that. That's kind of cool. Never done that or seen that before, but just made that shit up and looks pretty badass. Alright, so object create this is essentially what that would be, and then it's just a wrapper object that falls back to the underlying object, and then you can, well, and you could pass through the args. I think this is how it goes, but don't quote me on this. And then when you clone something, you could test like new tests or whatever equals test.clone, and then you could add or override whatever you wanted to. And what else? So one thing I was saying is, could you pass in, or might you want to pass in like a class here? Like thing. And so then maybe it gets chained through, like the arguments that are called to run or render. You know, it'd be render here too, because this ends up calling run. And this, what are all the arguments in the exact same signature are passed through to all the functions via this running process that goes through all the added tests. Oh, and also this could be imported tests, which is essentially, well, okay, so let's first say it could look like this, where you have like a, well, you need to give us a name, named block of tests. This wouldn't make much sense or work syntactically, but it's just sort of like a shorthand here. Thankfully, Notion doesn't underline everything when there's a syntax error. But then you could also have this imported block of tests, which could actually just be, or imported tests instance. An instance of this thing is basically just a container of tests, but now we're separating the tests, basically the functions that need to automatically run and other tests that need to automatically run from just methods. If you just had one container and you looped through every method and ran it, you couldn't have utility methods, and then like the whole rendering and running and everything would be kind of tricky to do. So anyway, I think that's what it is this add method was about separating certain property names to be kind of ran separately. And I think generally, if you could throw a warning if you override a similar, well, if you added a test that it already existed or something, would you want to, the name spacing can get tricky because, like, I don't know. I don't think I need to worry about that right now. Okay, so yeah, it's basically, but I don't think you need to unwrap all these and add them to this main one. I think you can just add them as they are, however they're added. Then it just kind of adds them. I don't know exactly if it kind of just merges this, maybe like an object assign on this thing onto like this dot tests. Or sorry, yeah. Anyway, thinking through the class definition, but this is more the usage of the class is sometimes more important than defining all the methods itself. It's like, first, what do you want the end product to look like, and how do you want it to work? So yeah, also part of this whole nested test running thing. I mean, could you even have like class-based tests? If this was a pretty common pattern to take one argument, which is the class that we're testing. So here's kind of part of this idea of test suites is that, let's say you had let's just call it base dot. Well, how about framework/base, and I have base.js in here. Part of the reason of having a folder for each class is that you could do framework/base/tests.js or /tests as like a actual page with an index that then loads things properly. It's a bit more work. I think, well, like, if I had a better router set up, then I could have it set up so framework/base would load index.js, and inside of that we could essentially get a route for tests, and then what would that look like? What would I pass in here? Well, it's essentially a function, I think. And in there, you could shorthand that to not have to wrap this in a function, but let's just do this for now. It's essentially tests.render. Well, this is base, so base. So that would be if you went to index.js. You're like rendering the index.html, it's loading index.js, and then we're defining this test route, and so then we have, you need to render a link to it, but essentially, or some way to activate it, but framework, in fact, I thought my links were real links. Maybe I can fix that. Let me think that through in a second. Framework/base/hash is slash. I kind of like just putting that hash by itself. I could change that, but because then I have, more path parts here. I mean, it could just be like some thing like this. That doesn't look terrible. It just changes the whole from //word/word to #word-word. So then we could go some thing like this, or you could, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. I think I will have some hyphens and URLs, but for some reason I just kind of liked doing the #/ and it doesn't really matter if you go into it's just sort of like a more prominent separator and then goes back into the /word kind of repetition. So tests was the tests was the route here that we just defined, and then when we click the link, so currently I'm manually, well, I can just look at the code, and because this is what I'm talking about in my test router. This would be framework test.js. Have this little matching should run if it matches. Well, it should run. These say it should run if there's no hash or if it matches. And if it matches, then it should run. But the clicky. So the activation is function methods should automatically bind. They should just build that in. It's like it would not be that hard at all to just default methods to automatically be bound to their object. When you pass in a method, it's the function just has a .this property to it. Like, I don't understand why that's so hard. Well, so I guess there isn't actually an instance-based method, so maybe that's part of it. But I still think if you're passing a reference to a method, and maybe at that point it could dynamically grab this reference, because you should have it. It shouldn't be. You shouldn't have to worry about binding things and forget and wonder why your code breaks. But anyway, what was I looking for? Oh, this activate. Okay, so you set the window hash to this .name. Really? Is that how it works? Doesn't it need a slash there for my thing to work? Maybe I went away with that slash thing. I haven't actually used this in a minute, so I could try and spin this up and actually create something, get it rendering. I probably should, but wasn't I writing tests for one of these? For app? Index? Yeah, it's right here. Well, let's throw this shit up. Let's get a new window left side. We don't have localhost running. I can probably do that right here. CD blue42com ls. We need to go into public and type CD public, obviously, and then IDX. Now we reload the page, and we should have the same thing that I didn't type localhost. All right. Why did my image break? Nobody knows. Huh. Interesting. I thought my image showed up there. It's that image right there. Anyway, so /framework/app. Here are my tests. And when I click one, okay, so there's no slash there, and it does URL encode and decode to get these %20s, but it works. And the thing I was thinking through with this test class is that it is going to, well, it has to reload. It sets the hash and then reloads. It's not a real link. This is a div with a click event handler. I use CSS to add the change in cursor when you hover it, but it's not a real link, and maybe it should be, and so let's think that through. If basically then I could just listen for hash changes. I think I did this once in a different router. If you listen for the hash change event, then essentially when somebody clicks the link, you could also use the click handler on a real link. The question is there any advantage to it? Part of me thinks like, oh, well, if it's a real link, then if somehow JavaScript fails or an error is thrown and the whole page just craps out or whatever, then it's still going to work. Because but I mean, this is rudimentary testing. I don't think it's worth really all that much thought. But it could be. It could be a real link, and then rethink how well, if it's a real link, like an anchor link, and you click it, then the hash well, first there's a click event, I think, and then the hash changes automatically without a page reload. And so then if you'd still need to manually reload it, and if you clicked it, does that mean, like, I think sometimes it jumps, it does like a scroll to type shit, and so that you can like anchor link from table of contents up here down to something deep in your page. But I haven't tested that in a while. I remember having a problem with it a while back and just didn't really figure it out. So anyway, let's see. Test class could be separate class from tests class, could be different from test. Sort of like a test suite. It has similar functionality, but then at the same time, having a separate class is kind of a bummer, because then it's confusing. So it could just be the test class is the test suite, and instead of like using it like this, where you just create a new test. So this auto renders it. Yeah, I think that's, instead of just creating a new test instance for each call to this test function, maybe this test function is more like a captured thing. And I was trying to remember why I set this up, because I don't think I actually use it, do I? I'm not calling that. Oh wait, I am. Wait, no, I'm calling view. So I commented out the test captor stuff. I was tracking it all separately. I wasn't even sure why, but maybe this is why. Maybe if I want to use the test class as a tests class, and instead of just creating a new test instance for every call to this test function, instead I'm keeping track of the current captor, and in a similar way to render capturing, when I create a new test, I could either do it inside test here, or somehow I could use this test method to just call like test dot captor, right? That's it, and then dot add, and then all the same arguments. So instead of creating a new test individually, it's just doing one of these. Now, sometimes my thinking is, why not have an actual class for each one of the things? So let's jump back over to my other little block of code, which was here. I don't know why I feel like this should be on this side. So for this, these are methods, but that's interesting. These could also be tests, like a test instance, or it's just some class. And so having two separate classes could be useful. I have done recursive classes where you can have instances of the same class within itself, and that is completely possible and doable, and not even that hard sometimes, but sometimes it gets a little wonky. I must have lost my spinning pencil. I can't think without my spinner, so I'll be right back. Where did that go? Stuck in the other chair that I was saying. Okay, so yeah, I mean, this is not hugely important. Oh, there goes some of my notes that I was trying to hide. Whatever. It's not important, right? Boom! it's clearly a trans lion. Oh man, it's funny. Alright, so whatever. Don't want to fall down a rabbit hole. That happens way too much and wastes a lot of time. falling down a rabbit hole here with, figuring out what to name things. And it's important, but it's not that important as long as it works. The problem is getting it to work means you really want to have a good logical grasp of all of these things, because you have to you got to juggle things and figure out how you're going to use them and how it makes sense. And anyway, back to the whole purpose here of all of this shit is to create what I wrote out was slash layout slash hash slash path slash to whatever. So create trees of routes. And at first it doesn't really matter what they look like. They can be sort of just rugged test wrappers. Like, where's my Figma from yesterday? Boom. They look pretty sweet. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to look like, but just getting these working. Well, so here's another thing I was writing down today that I think is useful, is that like router at root of page. So you could have, I wrote this down somewhere, it's essentially here, route could have this isn't really necessarily what I'm thinking, but could be kind of a thing, and then in here you have header, maybe it's app.header. That was an adjustment I was going to make. And then content probably might be just custom made for whatever page, and app.footer. And so in this sense, each route can swap out each header or comment out the header. If you don't want a header, it has full control over the thing, as opposed to something like app.header and then route 1 or 2 or whatever, and then in here you just have, can I tab that? Yeah, I guess twice. Content, and then app.footer down here. So just considering these two basic patterns, control copy, paste, enter, paste. The route on here doesn't care about, or doesn't concern itself with the header and the footer. The header and footer are constant for both routes, and so and the fact that this says router rather than route is not really important. I think I was going to have it set up like that, but the routes here, and probably copy, paste, enter, paste to. So the difference here is that you could have a separate header and footer. Is generally the in order to have a separate header and footer, do this. To have it the same header and footer, do this. I mean, one, you have to actually remember to rewrite the header and footer, so in a way it's more work, but it's more configuration. So if you wanted to swap it out or comment it out, to try different layouts, especially helpful for layout type shit, where sometimes you want to, or theming stuff, if you want to I haven't messed with theme functions yet, but it's possible I could do something like that. Maybe the theme is more of a module that you add and then later decide to activate or not. I haven't really worked with that pattern before, but that actually makes a lot of sense. It's sort of like import a bunch of things with the framework that you might want. You're not sure if you want it, but it's there if you do, because it's like a pretty common thing, like maybe a light and dark theme. Should it be like theme dot dark dot activate? That probably makes the most sense. It's a little long-winded, and maybe you just default to that in some sort of configuration. But if you wanted to test different layouts, now putting completely different themed layouts on the same page with this hash router might not be all that useful, but I'm just thinking things through and trying to figure out how to create the right structures for my thing. So, a tree, create trees of routes, create trees of trees. You know, like you want to just be able to build out anything. So I was thinking a lot about the multi-column layouts, and well, I realize that there's like several basic multi-column layouts. Maybe this is worth the picture that I drew. Not all. I don't always import all the pictures, but I drew a bunch of pictures. There's a couple pictures I could take. Let's see if I can get them into this note magically. So I open up my phone. I'm going to switch over to the camera for a second, but it's probably more useful to see the screen, because I think it'll actually update here. Man, my hair looks a little matted or whatever. Open the Notion app and go to my notes and click on the several basic multi-column layouts note. Click in the content area. I'm going to add a few returns just because images kind of can be hard to get the cursor above them again. But there is an image icon. I clicked it once. I lost focus. I had to click back in. All right, now we're getting the camera. And the lighting's not great in here. Kind of turn on this light right here. Yep, we got a little better light. And now I'm just gonna take a picture of the whole page, because why not? And figure it out from there. Okay, let's switch back over to. I think I see it kind of already loading. Yep, there it goes. So I imported my paper into my digital paper. I'm going to add another one real quick just because I'm in this mode and it's right here. So we do this camera. I should do this with all my notes, so that it just would take way too long. And I don't know. Let's do one more because this is kind of an interesting image here. Scroll down, add a couple page returns, camera, clicky. All right. That was pretty much it. There's a few more, but let's look through these on the computer now. So it is kind of dark. I could have gotten better lighting, but so the basic structures here. Yeah, you could let the content, any block, so like looking over here, like anything that you import, wherever it is, could sort of just be variable width, and then could decide to render its own second column, essentially is what I'm thinking. And so whether you're importing kind of like a system that's got its own sidebar, or whether you're importing just a single column that then could create its own secondary column or whatever, each thing can just be variable width. And so it's a pretty simple way of thinking about it. It's just like anything can create its own second column. And there you go. This is the first option, is that you can essentially just split an area in two. That's the most common column type thing. And so that was the first little bullet point here in my notes. You could just split it in the content. Then the second one was like it could be in line with the content. So let me just grab this thing, throw it out here, give it a better background, and well, well, so one of, the first one was like this, where you split it. The second one was like this, maybe, where it's some sort of, well, it's like, what did you click on? Let's say you clicked on one of these things. I don't think this is going to work, but let's see. Whoops. This isn't going to work because it's like semi-transparent, but yeah, it's sort of like in line with something, and kind of, yeah, in line is the best I can describe it. Well, it would scroll together. These would be like just one big thing. Frame selection would be like one big content area that's, able to grow width-wise and height-wise however big as it needs. This is an interesting concept that I've kind of done a little bit with in Figma, but it gets tricky because, like, well, if you keep doing that and you have different heights and widths and whatever, like, how does it all... Wait, why did these not... This thing's still probably the same size because it's not an auto layout. And then this isn't going to be able to position properly with an auto layout. It just jumps into either one of several alignments. Anyway, but yeah, it gets tricky, like, to organize the space properly. And I'm not gonna deal with that right now. But the third one was the kind of fill height type shit. Height fill. And so it was kind of more of like a panel based thing. What did I call it in my notes here? Properties panel or workspace. Yeah, this one was inline content. And then this one is, it could be more like just this look where it's even like, well, let's go back to some of my other layouts because I had a bunch of them. There's some of these more like flowy type column things. Now that I look at this is really complicated, and I don't think it's worth spending a bunch of time trying to get that all. I think just keeping space between things, but yeah, so maybe trying to create the like subordinate note type look where it's like underneath the other one. It's kind of a cool thing. It's very intuitive and kind of makes it look like one is like a sub note of another one, but I don't know if that's enough or a good objective. I don't know. It could be tricky to get the right look and whatever. And with the panel thing, it's really more about the independent scrolling. So if you had a secondary panel that was, who knows how much content you have in this thing and how tall it gets. And if they're, well, and same with this side, if they're, here I'm messing up all my stuff from yesterday. Should be in a new page here, but thinking through how they scroll, essentially, with different heights. They could be, one of them could be really long. If they scroll together, then imagine being kind of like, at this spot, and then you click on something and it pops open and everything's, you can, it's not a problem if they scroll together, per se, but you might want to, what is going on with these guys? What the hell? Who designed this thing? Surprised I didn't notice that before. So, and I'm not going to fix it on all the other ones right now. The linked scrolling could be maybe not as cool, but then it's sort of like a full width or a full height rather kind of panel. Like that's what I set up right there, was going for, and the way that works, like the idea here is you have two independently scrolling sections. So I need to test all these out in the browser and get a feel for it and try and style them up a little bit to kind of get those colors flowing and maybe even figure out just actually do it, right? Well, I mean, I could make some of these cards locking in on all the font sizes and whatever. It's not that hard. I could do it. But just getting this thing set up is kind of a pain in the butt. I definitely skipped the corners. Had a nightmare trying to keep those working. It is kind of the coolest part of the whole thing, not gonna lie. It's like it's just a subtle little detail. But I know these check boxes are cool too. Yeah, so all of a sudden kids are gonna be home in a few minutes and I'm not anywhere close to where I wanted to be. But this whole hat thing was something completely different. I was thinking about this properties panel. You know, the bottom right corner of this properties panel could be like a actions log, sort of like a history of, you know, everything that happens or all the notifications that happen. But it could be, first I said property specific, so like depending which property you're clicking on, or maybe not, but definitely object or selection specific. So whatever thing you click on has its own like little log. But then you'd also want like maybe another one that's like an app level or a higher document level or project level, or I don't know, there's all kinds of different scopes, and figuring out how this whole workspace kind of, I think sometimes you kind of want nested workspaces where you have one global workspace for like a project, and then within that project you might be working on some actual thing, and so you might need two properties panels. Haven't really thought of that before. This one is about the right size. What would that even look like? Well, it could be, I mean, having this huge ass title bar is obviously kind of a waste of space if you're not going to put stuff on it. But that's where you could pretty easily just do something like this. So this thing is then no longer as wide. I gotta rethink all this. I do think the left alignment here is kind of an important piece, but this could be sort of like, well, how about we make this side panel actually in here? Can we? I think it would go more at like a different level that it's not letting me. Alright, put some space on here and let me put my goddamn frame in the right goddamn spot, people. Alright, this one and this one, Shift A, go this way, reorder, and it's all jacked up because it's not big enough, more or less. And it can be bigger, but I'm trying to figure that all out right now. I think we kind of just want this height to fill to match the other one, and definitely could make it darker, and this one could be, it doesn't have to be too dark, but I was thinking, you know, you could have two sidebars, and then, well, more or less you would have the kind of scoped properties, and then you could even have like almost like this global workspace type shit where it's way darker or something. It could have its own title bar, a whole thing, but this could be like, well, it could be project level, figuring out how to do nested property panels. This is, I've never seen it done before really, and so I'm not sure what would go in all these areas. And then this could be like, it doesn't necessarily have to be that dark. I don't know, we could just call it global or global properties, but it's just a different area for different shit, basically, but more on a different scope. So you can always just kind of tell what kind of thing, you know, it's applying to, essentially. But okay, so this, there's so many variants, there's so many options, there's so many ways to set it up and align things, and like what works and what doesn't is still something I have to I'm getting lost day by day, and I'm getting deeper and even more lost. So I need to try and climb out of this fucking hole. And it's about not notification. It's about routing and tests in trees of trees. But what got me going a second ago was the different types of content here. So for both of these, it's basically just, well, so the inline one might actually render shit in a side column. And so the column itself could have like a secondary container for these kind of sidebar type shits, and each column could have like its own. Well, let me see if I could just. All right, this is gonna be crazy because this is actually whoops. This is more like kind of the trifecta or even more or something. I don't know why I'm feeling this one, but can this go sort of over here? And then this one and this one, shift A and get rid of the, no, not that one. This one, zeroed out, not negative, and then this can get wider. And this can, why is this? Should be with fill, I think. Okay. All right, so these aren't really properties, but it is just sort of another area, and I'm gonna get rid of this one, and maybe this one. Just an area for some shit. And now we got, how many sidebars we got in this thing? Well, we got one. This is clearly a sidebar. This looks like more like main level content. Here's a sidebar, here's a sidebar, here's a sidebar. So that's 4 sidebars plus the main column, so a 5 column layout. And it looks pretty ridiculous. But except for maybe this one. Like if we could just chuck that one away, then it's actually not that bad aesthetically. This one where it cuts off the header and footer gets a little weird. It's not entirely clear what it is. I think you make it more prominent with like a border on the left that's like, I don't know, some kind of color and bigger and just kind of helps offset it. I don't know. You can play with the design and try and figure out some way that it doesn't look like shit, but obviously the padding and the size and structure and layout I am not going to mess with right now. But what I am trying to do is think through from a view standpoint and the layout standpoint, like structuring these things. Are there specific names you need to give these? Are there specific CSS rules that, patterns that apply? How do you get from anywhere to adding the next thing? Like there's a lot of little caveats, I guess. It's probably not that hard to figure it all out at some point, but right now it's proving to be kind of tricky. And so you gotta like give a name to the different sidebars, like properties, and does that come and go? Probably. Does everything slide? Well, then it misaligns. Having the settings line up with the logo and whatever is kind of useful, and so you gotta think all that shit through, which is not really what I have time or mental capacity for right now. Let me go through my notes and try and jog my memory, because I'm actually, now that I'm spewing all this to the internet, I'm kind of losing my spot. I did have this test thing down here, and something like this is definitely, I don't know, a starting point. This is a hierarchy of things, and that's partly why I made it, or at least was designing it a long time ago. I think the hash structure or routing of nested things could get a little tricky, and I don't know if the tests thing itself, well, it's I'm manually reloading when the divs are clicked, so they're not real links. Not real links, probably, well, I think a page reload via JavaScript is necessary. So even real links would have to be intercepted. And you wouldn't want them to jump or scroll, so that's probably just not a good idea. So, so these decisions that I make, it's like I don't know where it goes because I'm hardly going to be able to find anything in a few minutes. Like, but making a conclusion here, no need for real links. Real links might cause a scroll jump. Maybe not if there's nothing to scroll jump to, but that would be something to consider. So, trees of things. This is kind of complicated. It's not as clean as just using the test function, but the thing about it is that it can organize other things. Now, I don't think putting everything in its own file is necessarily the best option, and this is another part of why I kind of did this, was in order to break out tests into multiple files without having to create multiple real pages. Right now, I'm still not able to quickly create a page and link to it, which is kind of crazy. Like, quickly create new page and link to it. Well, what type of page? What does the link or preview look like? I mean, it could export its own preview. And so you could import it and then render a preview that way. And so it's like, and it's probably worth writing down, import page and then page.preview creates its own link. That's really all you need, you know, for the, but you have to create it. Create the new page, create new render, create new, god damn it. Create, oh my god, page index.html, create page. I could just do and put JavaScript in the index.html. I just feel like it's better to be in a JavaScript file or something. I don't know. If there's an extra file, could be reduced. Especially if it's just an index.js. It's not really doing much usually. Sometimes it might though. Also to have a single import point so that you can, that might have to change, that the index.js is used as the render file and also an import. If I wanted something to be importable, I might have to use like a page.js here to render the content, or content.js or something like that, so that it takes the place of index and frees this up to be more of an exportable thing, where then I can import things and export something else, and then that, because you definitely want, if you ever import a directory, it's most common that you'd have index.js being exported. So, all right, but yeah, creating a new page and then import and preview/link. That's just for a blank page. That's 1, 2, 3 new things plus a fourth step to just import it and preview it. One, you have to like create it and export it, and well, so what would be the it would be this one, right? I didn't actually think that through. With this import page or app and new app.page, like what is it, and export. God, I hate these blocks that don't usually work. Export default new app.page. Gotta be a name for that, like closure based bullshit that where formatting just hijacks or abandons its neighbor or whatever improperly. All right, so import page or app and export default new app.page. Export default new app.page. Yeah, that's kind of crazy because that's not how I've done it so far, where I'm exporting a page and usually I'm not even linking to new pages. I'm just kind of typing the URL and manually, like normally I just manually create the new error plus files and type it into browser. Importing the thing from the higher level, let's say, in order to link it could be problematic. The index.js is set up to render shit right now. So you wouldn't want to just import it and auto render it on the wrong page, obviously. Yeah, that's the thing. So you'd have to create a different file, or just, I mean, you could potentially do what you could make index.js the export one that doesn't automatically render, and then so it's such a big runaround just for like ideal, making things more ideal. But it's like, okay, so how about you just call render page.render inside index.html. That's kind of what all that needs to happen then. Like, if index.js is an exportable thing that you want to be able to import at another level and not auto render. Unfortunately, that means importing all the dependencies, which is potentially a lot. Yeah, so man. Yeah, it's like, even if it doesn't auto render, drawing shit on the screen, it's still potentially importing a bunch of like libraries. If it's like a game, or just to link to it, you gotta import the whole goddamn game. Like, that doesn't make sense. But that might have to be that point in order to import metadata, in order to link to it, or whatever. Or maybe just draw a preview that has view counts, or what, or I don't know, like, there are likely a lot different dependency level type shit, like what do you bundle, import, like But sort of that, how do you import part of something? And then are you going to not have the right things? Should you just import everything everywhere? You can do that until it gets to a certain size where you can't. Yeah. So, fuck, man. So many decisions, and I wish I could have gotten started on this today. I was actually considering coming down here. Let me drink some water. Let me try and reset my brain. I want to create trees of trees. I want to test these layouts. I mean, so I think what's it called? Code drops does like nav in the content. So it's essentially like if you want to have full screen content that also has nav, you gotta put it in there. But this is so that you can let the page have full width, full height and width, with no like kind of sidebar nav, no navigation. So that's kind of what I'm thinking, actually, as part of the trick here, is that if I want to test full screen layouts and have a whole bunch of them and just start trying to work towards something better, I need to have some sort of like navigation to see what I have so far that correlates to the code, obviously. And I think it's really a matter of putting this table of contents in the content area. And so maybe that's a matter for the tests view. Tests view. So let's put some space on there. So render, really it's the rendering. Tests.render creates, does a test.render function create a new view? I think sometimes I had it set up that way, but that might be excessive. You're not really going to call the render again, are you? So maybe just creating a new one. I think sometimes it was something like this, well, it would be like a render method, and in the render method, whoops, I would have this dot view or even views dot push or whatever equals this dot constructor dot view, oops, new, and this and it tests this, and that's sort of it. Like, you just create one view and there it is. Decide when and where to render it, and you get a view, or maybe views, and maybe you have an update. I don't know. That's kind of the basic pattern for views, I think. And you could have it if you had more than one. If you wanted to render it in more than one place, you could do that, and then update all the views by looping. So, what about the TOC? It's this is sort of part of the layout thing, right? Like, if you're going to render some columns, where does the table of contents has to go inside one of the columns? It has to go somewhere. So maybe I just have to sort of manually hack that into place. How would that go? Well, I still haven't really thought through this test tree thing, and it is sort of a tree. And let's see if I can get a simple tree to look at, just to kind of refresh myself. What does a simple tree look like? I mean, this is one. This isn't so simple. I've already like activated one of the sections, and fuck. But yeah, it's sort of like, but are all of these actual tests that can run? Are these separate things that you can click on? Maybe. But maybe this is the page title, or this just goes away and is nothing. Do you need like this overarching thing? Not really. Well, let's copy this down here and then get rid of this, and then just say like this is test 1 and test 1 tab test 1 2 test 1 3 tab test 2 tab test 3 tab test 4. Okay, that's sort of some nested tests. That's a pretty basic thingy, and yeah, I don't know, like the way that you structure the tests is this could be a whole, one file even. Like it's a test, but it has subtests within it. The question is each one of these things like a new page, or do you want to be able to like see them side by side? And actually, I think unfortunately the question or the answer to that is either one. Now, if it's a layout, it's more like should these tests be always be launched in isolation or displayed, let's say multiple displayed at once? And frankly, this is sort of like that masonry grid thing. What if these, this isn't so masonry grid like, but I have one somewhere else. What if these are sort of like these tests, or at least content blocks, or whatever they are kind of pulled in from a lot of different areas and then kind of merged into one type shit. And that, as I was thinking earlier, I don't know if masonry is possible. I could do it. It would just take a long ass time. I don't know if it's worth it to just get a subtly different order of things. But if you actually had, like, if you were going for some sort of setup and you had especially if you had a bunch of uniformly sized things and you wanted to create a grid out of them, but like a responsive grid that would be different numbers of things at different sizes and wrapped properly. I mean, if you knew the size of them, CSS grid could work, but if they're variable sized and you're not sure what size they are, and you just then it gets tricky. I think I need to think through the layout algorithm that would be necessary. You're gonna have to like do the whole wrapping, well, the size fitting essentially, the min maxing, or I don't know. It's my brain is super fried right now. I'm coming down off my bit here, and maybe I should go to the gym today if you haven't been there in a week or so, rather than go drink myself to death. I could go to the gym and then drink myself. Doesn't that sound like a wonderful plan? Well, okay, so let's try and make some fucking headway with this. Jeesh. Trees of things. Auto rendered, because I can't be arsed to like draw out or type up a huge list of things. Well, it's more like, what do they look like and where does it go and how do you have sub things? That's the thing. Trees of trees. This is kind of it, actually. This is a pretty badass one right here, but yeah, the multi-level, like, This is 4 levels or more, right? I mean, the settings here doesn't make much sense. This profile thing here would maybe then, this would be profile? It's not entirely clear, and like, this could be change password even. It's way too big now, so we could just back that down so it fits and maybe make this thing bigger so shouldn't this be fill? It's not entirely clear to me how that would cascade and whether it would work properly to access all the things and whether you have the right visibility and logically, like, it's, you know, what happens when you click this profile link here. Does this then say profile? It probably would, but does that all adapt properly? I don't know anymore. There's too many options. Nobody's helping me with this shit, so gotta figure it out on my own. Go my own way. Breaking my brain here. Permanent damage. Doesn't that look nice? Meanery. Wasn't there something else? I guess that was it for that page there. Yep. Feeling brain dead. Not sure exactly what to do. The whole tree of trees is probably not that hard. Where was I though? So here's a tree of trees, sort of. Well, this is like lots of multi-column shit anyway. It's not really the tree of trees thing. The tree of tree thing is sort of like, I could just type it up, but it's sort of like this thing here. It's just like any arbitrary number of sub things. You could have 1.1.1. And there should really be no limit to it. And the test suite system, in that sense, can just start rendering all of its children, and each one renders itself, and in that sense you can do it. But the way that works with the actual file system, I think I need to get back into the code, but I don't know if I don't have the brain space for it right now. I might have a few hours ago, but whew, I think I need to stop streaming and take a nap or something. Well, that's unfortunate. Only an hour in today, and I'm already burned out. I got a late start because took the kids to the dentist, and sat in my chair, and I really was having a bad morning. I wasn't even sure if I was going to be able to do anything, but decided to try and do it anyway, and definitely got some good notes down. Sort of got back into the whole router headspace and looking at these test blocks, and I do kind of slowly moving forward with trying to figure out the right way to get this done, but there's a lot of options, and I need to just pick one. Putting the table of contents in the thing. So, like, let's say the full window is like the whole goddamn thing, and at some point you just want to render your list. No matter how big it is, just frickin' chuck it in there. Maybe it's even it could just be a title bar, frankly. Well, I was thinking it could be a drop-down list. Where was that list UI thing? This one looks pretty nice. Control copy. So, these are names, but these could be the names of the tests. Now, this isn't a tree, but it could be. A drop-down that then has a whole tree in it. That's kind of a cool idea. You can select any one of them. Well, that's kind of the thing that I need, and it doesn't even have to be. You don't even have to put the name of the thing there, although it's probably a useful thing. Could that just go in the header? Could I have a header that just has a drop down on it? Let me go back to this main, I think, and get like, I don't know if it's just one of these. Copy. Go back here for a second, paste, and then I think it's just this thing. If we drag this one up here, instead of having an actual thing, this might need to go darker, which means that might need to go considerably darker. And then this, it's kind of competing with a lot of things, like Notion's background here, which I don't know if this should go darker or not. Maybe just a little bit. It's getting kind of confusing here, but I kind of like this being white, this drop down list here. Jacob Jones. So this could be, you know, but when you switch this, so the header essentially has the table of contents in it, which is just a single drop-down menu. I mean, that's kind of, it's almost the idea of the start menu. It is a pretty quick and easy way to put a lot of things into a little area. Now the question here is it good enough to handle all the layouts that I'm thinking of? Like, what if we don't want a header? Well, frankly, this is the TOC. And so, well, and the header could be like a container, right? What if it was app.header, but because this is like a container, well, you'd either pass in a function or just pass in the elements directly, but it could essentially be tests.toc. I feel like I haven't done much of this where you call a function to, I'm not sure what would be returned here. This pattern is feels a little iffy to me. I think doing the, well, I don't know, let's just say that for now. Tests.toc. I think binding to this, or to tests, might be required unless you auto bind it somewhere else. But then so passing is sort of like appending a function. And the app.header function, is that like smart enough to do that this way? It's a little confusing what's going on here, but essentially the header could be accept any number of things here. So whatever you pass in just goes right into the header after the logo. And wasn't the logo supposed to be a jump menu? What happens when we click the logo? Well, isn't it supposed to bring up a big ass tree? It's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm not sure if just having one giant fucking tree, especially for tests, you don't want that in the public version, do you? I mean, it's not a terrible idea, but the test trees could be customized so that when you're on a test page, then, but maybe that's more like what this drop-down menu is. Could be a very similar experience overall. Like when you click this one, it could go more full screen, and then this one is more like inline. Does it like drop down below this thing? Does this stay visible? It probably would. Does the thing slide down from, like, how exactly would that work? Oh, not like that. How about like this? And exactly how that would look. They could probably pop up below it where it just be nice to get rid of that frame label, but I'm not gonna worry about that right now. But it just kind of pop up below. Should probably then have like a pretty big blur on it. Oh, that looks kind of nice. Kind of nice. But I almost feel like it should be I feel like it should be, why does it keep jumping? Okay, I feel like it should be maybe right on top or even including it. What if it slides down from the top left corner like this, and then the content itself, which can go right up in the top corner, gets like duplicated in there. So that when you click on it, and then this thing could actually just, and this could turn into an X. You're getting an X from the library, but they seem to be one of the quicker ways to do it. I mean, the size of this thing doesn't really matter. I mean, it might, but whoops. Like how, what, whoa. I think we can make this left and right. And this is just an example. It's kind of a cool thing. And what goes in there could vary. This is also sort of the beginning of like an autocomplete system, but it's essentially just an anything menu. It turns a white block into a bigger block. Kind of thing that should go full width. Maybe there's still like a hamburger menu on the other side or something, and that you don't want it to go absolutely full width. Maybe it stops a little bit short to leave room for a different button. This, I don't know, this color is competing with the corner of the paper. Maybe this needs to go dark. I don't know. Kind of don't feel it, but what do I know? It's not terrible. Maybe that's too dark. Maybe that's fine. I don't know. That's kind of a cool effect, though. Is that the right one? Well, the problem with it is, what if we want to do this whole kind of nav jump menu thing somewhere else? Also, this needs to be responsive, which shouldn't be that hard. Might need to look a little different, like maybe on mobile the M just disappears and this thing takes the full width and becomes just one tall column. That's a decent way to do it. But would this be at the bottom of the page so you could click it easier? And I think it all depends on what the heck it is. And you know, this is more set up as like a drop down. Let's put this one over here. I don't know if that's a good spot, but let's duplicate these two, and we're going to frame those to get rid of one of the things, and then we're going to delete this one so we can see that, and we definitely don't need three of them. That's kind of weird. So maybe this should just be like all the way to here. Maybe this should line up with that one. Hard to say. Overshoot it a little bit. Is it covering a menu button? Maybe it then undershoots it. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. mobile friendly. I don't know. It's even necessary. I don't know. The other thing I was thinking is that for whatever other layout, if I was trying to make, let's say, something without a header, without it in that way, but I don't know. Maybe instead of thinking of something else, I should just run with this one because it's actually looks pretty good. It seems like there's a lot of potential for what you could put in here, and this could be like a big nav menu essentially. Like put all the things. Could be the same thing that's in the footer for any page. It's essentially just all the sub things. And so if you created some big ass test block in code, how do you display multiple tests at once? Well, let's see if we could just kind of feel this out. So it's like, let's just use layout as the example. Test 1. Is it the index.js that we're exporting from this? And then in layout / index.js, we're going to import test 1 from, maybe this is why could test 1 be like a tests thing where it's a collection of them? I don't know. From test 1 / index.js. Importing stuff from index.js is weird. I don't know if you can just do this on browser modules. I haven't tested that. I just don't remember if I've tested that. So let's just be more clear. And then, well, so let's say you had several of these. For any one of them, when you click on it, it could launch it as its own kind of standalone page and test, or you could create a column and put each one in each one. So it's like test1.render, and make a new column, and then render the next one. So now you're specifying I want 3 columns and I want you to put one of the things in each of the things. And that could work to then kind of have more control over what renders where. And each one of these things in some sort of, this is almost the beginning of a masonry, because then would you have you could have test 4 here. And then god damn it, why is this so confusing? Test 5. I think I can go here to paste this. Test 6. So it's sort of like a manual masonry. The problem with this is it doesn't, well, with 6 things, it doesn't get actually that out of hand. In fact, it's actually a good point. Well, it goes like 2, then 2, 2, 2. Goes 2, 2, 2. Well, I had 3 columns, sorry, so it's 2, 2, 2. And then it goes the other way. and then eventually can go full stack, right? But it's not easy to rearrange these things, especially if you have a lot more of them. Sounds like just a lot of bullshit. I don't know if I can actually get it. I got an hour till the kids get home. I think I actually need a nap right now. I'm just feeling so brain dead. I think I'm gonna put on some music and just take a nap.